because my working language is English, therefore I will be giving my presentation in English. And actually I would like to talk a little bit in the sense that the ideas that I'm going to present actually were discussed with my master students, where I'm teaching history of translation series and something, of course, which is related to translations into English from Sweden. In a way, some of the discussion will be more or less concerning the same aspects or overlapping with what two previous presenters were talking about the Spanish and French translations. My area is the English translations, and I will start with that. So, early translations reviews, first of all, of Donelaitis include the first German review from 1818. Based on the translation of Ludwig's Reason, we also have already we have had this presentation, and we know quite a lot about that now. And the first evaluation of Donelaitis in English appeared in the Saturday Review of Politics, Literature, Science and Arts. And this was an article published in London in the same year, in 1869, under the title Donelaitis, the Lithuanian Poet. And it was the review by Nesseman, then in English. And there was also a question today asking how many languages now have Donelaitis translated into. So there is a very good website. I actually looked at it yesterday, Donelaitis vertimuose. You can Google it. And actually the number of languages is quite impressive, especially Esperanto. You know, who is reading Esperanto these days? But still, the interest in this particular, in the work of Donelaitis, of course, then is very clearly stated in that sense. So, as regards translations into English, part of the epic, first of all, Joys of Spring by Clark Mills, was published in the Anthology of Wesleyan Literature, the Green Book in 1962 in New York. In addition, there is also quite a lot of good information in the commemorative issue of Vytautas from 1964, which was devoted to Donelaitis. And also, you can find there several excerpts translated not only by Platnus, but also by Nadas Rastanis, Demionitis, and Fyodor Melnichuk. However, the poem itself, to the full, was not translated until 1967, and his translation was done by Nadas Rastanis and published in Los Angeles, so we very clearly see that all the previous translations are related to people working in the United States. And the other full translation of the Seasons is almost 20 years apart from 1967, and it was done by Peter Kempis, published by Baba in 1985. I believe that quite a lot of people have seen the book. I've got it with me. If anyone is interested, you can have a look at. So, problems posed for translators by cultural content of any original text can be approached from different perspectives. First, on the macro level, this allows us to see the cultural content in terms of its contribution to the effect of the whole text, and I think Professor Gapšienė has mentioned certain aspects of this particular approach. And also, on the other hand, when considering individual cultural components, problems arise at the lexical, semantic level. Namely, what is a very important aspect in translations of the kind is the treatment of words and phrases that refer to culture-specific entities. And we can name quite a lot of areas that would fall under this particular item. And these would include customs, traditions, clothes, food, institutions, which means that this is the whole network composed of the details referring to the daily life of a particular nation. Collectively, in Western literature, in English especially, these items are referred to as culture-specific items. It is not the crime scene investigation series. This is the abbreviation is the same, but of course it refers to something else. And of course, this is one of the most important aspects. And translators, practicing translators, therefore, of course, are very often have to deal with these particular problems. So, attempts to provide solutions for translation of CSIs have been made by many practicing translators and researchers alike. Davis, in one of the articles from 2003, summarizes the treatment of these items in translation from two perspectives. First of all, the distinction is made between two basic goals of the translator. The first one, to preserve the characteristics of the source text or to adapt them to the target audience, and of course this is reflected in the notice principles of domestication and foreignization. The second perspective is a list of alternative procedures for dealing with individual items. This has been also suggested by many scholars, including Newmark, Baker, Chesterman, Davis, to mention just a few, and of course those who know Lithuanian context. Of course, Violeta Kalėdaitė has to be mentioned in that context. By the way, the word realia is not used in English, so therefore it's a way of the Lithuanian way of talking about culture-specific items. Then, also, both practicing translators and scholars try somehow to put together the two perspectives. The wide imagination, how the text should sound, whether it should be geared toward foreignization or domestication, and also the procedures, the actual translation procedures and techniques that may be applied in order to achieve the goal. And Davis, in her 2003 article, and I quote, writes the following: these items can be ranked on a scale according to their degree of adaptation, end quote. So with respect to translation strategies for these cultural items, she distinguishes 7 procedures: preservation, addition, omission, globalization, localization, transformation, and creation. And if we could put them on the continuum, at the one end being foreignization, and at the other end being domestication, of course the closest to foreignizing will be preservation strategies or method or technique, and creation, transformation will be much, much closer to domestication, and such method as addition, localization, globalization, and omission will be somewhere in between. So actually, when we come to think about the means that translators have at their avail, of course, there are quite many of them, but the principal question, whether we do more, whether we should introduce a more foreignizing method, or whether we should go, as I have already been quoted, whether we should take the text, the author, to the reader that is going to read the translated text. Then again, depends, of course, on the purpose of translation. Therefore, we may not pronounce judgments whether it is a good translation or not. These days, it's not really a very prescriptive approach, but depending on the aim, and Professor Donelaičio very clearly demonstrated this with the translation into French. Perhaps the focus here could explain that, because the aim was different from what other translators may want to do. Then, how all this works. Venuti, he has borrowed his ideas from Schleiermacher and developed, now not at least my students, not too many of them remember the name of Schleiermacher, what they always quote is Venuti. Foreignization, domestication, this is something that they very easily, talk about. So, Venuti defines domesticating translation as a replacement of the linguistic and cultural difference of the foreign text with a text that is intelligible to the target language reader. As such, domestication is a powerful means of bringing the translation closer to the target language readers by speaking a familiar language. And seen in the slide, domestication refers to all changes performed on various levels of the text in order to enable the target readers, the members of another nation, living in another geographical reality, with a specific socio-historical experience and a unique cultural background to fully grasp the text. Now, foreignization covers different processes of cultural translation, including othering, which is understood as an ethical act of respect for the other's specificity. Foreignization then denotes the preservation of significant amount of what is alien and unusual in the reading context of the new target audience. But common, unique, distinctive, or typical for the source culture. The foreign, strange, or even the exotic retained in the text is expected to be a stimulus to exactly reading this particular translation. Many factors, and we have already seen this in discussions of Spanish and French translations, may be invoked in deciding how far to go in either domesticating or foreignizing the target text. Of particular interest is Holmes's claim from 1988. He thinks that among contemporary translators, while there is a general tendency to favor domestication at the linguistic level, there is an opposing trend towards historicizing and exoticizing in the socio-cultural situation. And when we're discussing the same thing, says that foreignization can take a number of different forms. Close adherence to the foreign text is one, and retaining cultural markers or culture-specific items is another. So the concept of culture, as well as the culture-specific items, encompasses a variety of aspects of human life. And therefore, it is quite natural that different categorizations of these particular items have been proposed. Newmark, one of the theoreticians and the practitioner, distinguishes 6 categories. Well, including public life, social, personal life, customs, pursuits, private passions, even. Another author, Spindola, suggests giving 10. Okay? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that's a pressure. So Spindola suggests 10 categories, and he includes forms even of entertainment, means of transportation, fictional characters, measuring systems, food and drink, which is a classical example of cultural items, and so on. Then I realize, I think this is the pronunciation, I'm not sure which nationality he is. It's very, suggested very simple, the classification, just 2. Proper names, which are easily recognizable, and also common expressions. So whatever is left from proper names would be interpreted as common expressions, and they of course cover the world of objects, institutions, habits, opinions, restricted to a particular culture, which cannot be included in the field of proper names. Now, I have prepared several examples, except now I have to find them here so that I could open and comment on them as I see it. Oh, where is it? Okay. I wonder if these can be enlarged. I'm sure they can. Is it better? Okay. Now, it so happens that I have also included several variants of translations of Kristijonos and Kalbą and things, so you will be able to get the answer from the presenters concerning other languages. So, two translations are being compared at the moment. The first one is, as you may see, the Lithuanian line, and the first English line comes from the translation of Naujas Rastanis, who is actually he has a Lithuanian background, and the second line in English is by Peter Tempest, who is who has got British background. Even very superficially, we can see that there is really a difference in the treatment of cultural content by these two translators. Now, first of all, our waters. Now, Rastanis suggests our bins and barrels filled in autumn to the brim. The Tempest writes corn bins. I also, what I did, let's have a look. You know, it's very good to have Google now. You can get all kinds of things. So, barrel. This is what barrel is. And you imagine what a bin is. Dustbin and things like that. So, if we come to think and interpret these particular translation barrels and bins, we wouldn't say that they meet or correspond or are equivalent to what Donelaitis wrote. Now, Kristijonos. Have a look what Rastanis does. Kad prisėlių virti skanų šupinį pleškit. His translation is, was life sustaining. Of course, this is kind of explanation in a way what good you can get from this particular meal. And what he mentions here, rye, wheat, barley, peas, and oats. Enumerates all the corn and the food that would be usually eaten by peasants. Well, then oatmeal back. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. So Kristijonos here: rye, wheat, barley, peas, and oats, and now again we could think about oatmeal back as Kristijonos. And oatmeal and pea mash, how pea mash comes into the picture is not clear at all, because this is something, and I also got this, where is the pea mash? Have a look at that. This is at least what Google provides. So, I don't know, perhaps not too many people had this during the time that Donelaitis was writing. Of course, I may not be sure, but still. Or in other cases, also, this is what was used for Kristijonos, gruel, which is a kind of porridge. Again, this is not exactly that would give the idea about that specific drink, we may say, that Lithuanians have developed. Okay, what else? Let me see, what is the text I lost now? Okay, here. What else? Again, ropės, vechukai, turnips, potatoes. This is the Lithuanian background translator. And sweets, suggested by Tempest. Now, viralais Zopostui buvo padėti. Now, sauerkraut comes in. For some reason, I imagine sauerkraut is rūgštus kopūstai rauginti, which do not fit here. Or, I like that one, jūs kumpiai dešrelės su lašinėliais. And then the Rastanis, who has a Lithuanian background, knows that it is sweet ham. Very good thing. Oh, you rich sausages and pork. So rich stands here for, having quite a lot of lard being like this. So this part was in, let me see, what's this? Joys of Spring. Even the titles of the songs are different. Joys of Spring and Spring Joys were suggested by the two translators. Now, with respect to autumn waltz, what might be important or interesting? Kailiniai, okay, both of them choose sheep singles. It must be natural, something that was quite popular then. And here we have Kakalį. Boba su diedu blogu pas Kakalį siunčia. And Kakalis is imagined as being the blazing stove, or tempest simply translated just the stove. Stuba. It is translated here, Rastanis gives the variant wind-tight home, which indicates that it will be very warm inside and nobody will suffer the harsh winter. And Tempest simply leaves it out, except that changes the syntax, the idea, while driving others in to warm their ribs, so that you will be inside and you can make your own generalizations regarding that. Okay, now I found it quite interesting about kuinas. Kur pirm du kuinų lengvai mums pavežė naštą. Rastanis first of all suggests were two old dobbins. I'm teaching English, but I've never heard this particular word. Of course, I googled again and I will show you what the difference is. Then Tempest uses were once two nags. Again, a different word here. And also, there is a third, where is it? Let me see, the third, dress for the wedding wall and bridled their old nags. And then, have a look, kuinas here by Tempest is the word jade, again. Naturally, of course, translation problems will arise with what? With the garments, with the clothing, with the food especially, but also with the clothing that women were wearing. Kikas nuometu. For Rastanis it is hoods and kerchiefs and headcloths. Tempest suggested a cap with scarf. It's a description, explanation of what it's all about. And wimpel, women wear. And I also perhaps, I'm making two far-fetching conclusions, but vainikas. So Rastanis, being a Lithuanian, in a way, writes what? And maidens all adorn their hair with wreaths of rutos. Must be in his culture associated that maidens have to have rules, and of course this is what all of a sudden comes into the picture here. Whereas Tempest uses garlands. I also checked that and Googled it, and I found an Indian film star at her wedding with the garland here, and especially for New Year's Eve, things that you do with the flowers and also fir trees. Yes, then I also included this Schulzes. I will comment a little bit on Tempest's ideas because he was explaining his choices in some of his, in the introduction to his translations. But here very clearly we can see that, again, bailiwick suggested by Rastanis or hetman, in fact, even in English, differ quite a lot because they do not really express more or less the same contents. Well, proper names. Slunkius Kalėda, yes. So again, Rastanis, his publication was in 1967, so perhaps then the Lithuanian diacritics were not attached to the names. The situation is already different with Tempest translation. All diacritics are included into the proper names, and then again, this is one of the very clear signs of foreignization. We are not, we really spell our names the way are done in reality. Okay, so these are the examples. There are more, but more or less. Oh, also, plitskai. I am not familiar with this particular word in Lithuania. I don't even imagine what plitskai is. But this is what wheaten scones. So scone is I think, a Germanic, British kind of eating. Therefore, Tempest is using this particular word or combination. But let me see, where is this? Okay. And here is plitskai for a stance. Quite different. Yes, but then also he used that in a different context. And here the horses. My garden, it doesn't look like koinas to me. It's quite nice. Then, yes, nag. Well, this one, yes, much closer to the idea, and so on. Okay, now where is my... So more or less the things. Now, of course, perhaps the translators would be doing a translation today, but of course can always ask Google to help them out to see whether things match or not. But in principle, now to generalize, I just will give really not conclusions, but a little bit of... No, I have to finish. Okay, good. So the point is that if we look from a wider perspective, we can very clearly see that both translations into English means what? There are certain areas where we can clearly say that yes, this is the foreignizing strategy. On the other hand, there are quite a lot of instances where we will say this is a domestication. And actually, other theoreticians, Timochko, for example, she does not believe that there should be this very clear division into foreignization, domestication, because there's something, then it is a very polarized way of looking at things. And in most translations, we usually apply those perspectives, how we will deal with a particular text.